friends and foes. Welcome back to Art Book Club and to the Brushwork Podcast. My name is Stephanie Scott, and today we're talking about Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit. All it takes to make a creativity a part of your life is the willingness to make it a habit. That's the first line on the back cover of this book, and I think it really encapsulates what this book is about. It talks about routine, it talks about how to get out of a rut, it talks about your genetic history and how that changes you as a creative person. There's many little short stories about her time as a dancer and her work as a choreographer. I think you're going to like this book. And here's a discussion with me and Visual Nomad chatting about it live on Twitch. Get started. How was your week? What'd you do this week? Anything good happen?
I painted a lot, like usual.
Nice.
So I did get 3 of my 9 paintings done. So
nice.
There's victory there.
Oh my gosh.
So
I have a large commission on my wall, and I'm like, I should get started on that because I know it's going to take a while. But it's such like a big canvas, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm a little nervous.
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it.
It is intimidating with big pieces for sure.
No kidding. And I feel like that's a great introduction to our book of today, Friends and Foes.
Of course.
Welcome to
Yes.
Art Book Club. We're here talking about a good book, and it's interesting. Oh my gosh, it's a friend. Hello. Today on Book Club, I've got Visual Nomad, my friend Jim. She is a oil painter here on Twitch and also on Instagram and other places. You exist on the internet. It's great. And we are chatting about The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. Is that how you say your name? Twyla? I think it is.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm glad y'all are here chatting with us. Booty Tootin', welcome in, that thing you love. What's up, Buttercup? Good to see ya. We read a book this month that is all about creative habits and kind of, it's a self-help book for artists. And to start us out, for the very first chapter of this book, it talks about the empty space, the blank white wall room, you know? And I was just saying to Jen that I have a giant commission up on my wall. It's like 30 inches by 60 inches. And I read the first chapter of this book and I was like kind of intimidated with this painting. And I decided I'm just going to paint part of it blue. Not because it needs to be blue, but because there needs to be something on it. and I think it's working. But, you know, do you ever get intimidated by blank canvases?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like right now, I'm in the middle of this collection that's planned out. But what I'm going to do next, I'm not real sure. And so there's always that limbo space, I think, between pieces. I try to combat that with, having a work journal where I can just jot down ideas as they come to me. So that I have like a reserve. So I'll go to that first and see what's in there and see if anything is like, oh yeah, this seems like the right time to do that.
I like that.
I think that's my best tool to combat that is just, write it down when it comes to you.
Yeah.
You may not use it then, but it may become something later.
Do you ever find that your good ideas have an expiration date?
Sometimes. I have one piece that I was like super fired up to get started with and jump into.
Yeah.
And it had a lifespan of about a day and a half. And then that feeling kind of waned. And I was like, yeah, I'm not there at the moment.
Yeah.
Will it come back? Probably. It's a pretty relevant topic. So I'm like, maybe I'll get in that headspace again and I can jump into it. But yeah.
That thing you love just said, that reminds me of the ADHD method of starting an essay with once upon a time and then writing random stuff just to get the ball rolling. And this book is all about that idea of like, just starting anything, starting any sort of muscle memory of your creative thing and get the creative juices flowing. I asked you the idea about, or the question about having ideas having an expiration date, because I feel like recently I've been having good ideas, or I'll have like ideas for a commission that I can't do right now because I have other responsibilities. And I've been feeling like I've been missing the window of excitement by like several weeks just over and over again. And it's kind of frustrating because I was really excited about this commission about a month ago, but I had to prepare for the art show that I have at the tea house right now. And and now I have time to work on this commission, and I'm like, I can't wait to work on the thing I need to work on for January of next year. And like that's where my energy is, and I'm like, oh no, what have I done? How did I get this out of order? Yeah, it's funny.
And I mean, that's hard because at that point you go, okay, so I have this focus right now that's priority, you know, the art show. And you go, but I have this piece that's like in me right now.
Yeah.
Do I sacrifice, quote unquote, my health at this moment and take the time to get that piece started so that I can come back to it?
Right.
But, you know, take a few days and you're like, is it worth it? And there's always that, I think that back and forth struggle of taking care of yourself and, you know, getting into your work. I think that's something that everybody struggles with. It's that work-life balance type thing.
Totally.
And constantly a struggle.
Gosh, I need now to figure out a way to get re-lit up about my current project, right? Where I'm like, okay, now this is the time I've allocated for this painting. I need to get re-excited about it. How do I get re-excited about it without being like, I just want to work on this other thing? Like, is that part procrastination? Maybe? Like, you know, I have a deadline coming up and I'm like, oh, what if I worked on literally anything else, including another painting instead of what's important? Like, is that part of it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, because I look at it this way, like it could be, okay, so from my normal, let's say my normal studio hours are, you know, 1 to 6. Okay. So during that time, I work on the stuff that is, you know, the show, getting all that together. And then, okay, maybe after dinner, I wander back into the studio and I take a couple hours at night and paint some more. That's more than I normally would do.
Yeah. It's a lot.
But it's not neglecting the focus, because during work time, you're those things. And this is just as much a part of that as anything else is. It's a constant thing. So I don't think it really matters when or where. I don't think it's procrastination if it's moving towards the same spot.
All right, well, let's look at this book. Here's the book.
Okay.
The Creative Habit. Question number 1: have you finished the book, or did you start it?
I have not finished the book. Okay.
I've
looked through the majority of it and read about half of it, roughly.
All right.
Oh.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I finished the book. I finished it yesterday.
Okay.
And you know, overall, I didn't really like this book, which is interesting. I think this is the first book that I haven't liked.
Okay.
Which I thought, I was like,
why not?
I was chatting with my boyfriend and I was like, Luke, I don't like this book that much, which means it's going to be an excellent book club book. Because whenever I don't like something, I have like opinions. But when I like something, I'm like, yeah, it's good. You should read it. I'm like, that's it. So good. So honestly, this is like a self-help book for creatives, and that's like the theme. And we've read a couple of these in the past. But I felt like all the advice wasn't really advice. Like it was kind of advice, but it wasn't really advice. It was more like stories about the author, Twyla Tharp, and less about actual ways to make your creative practice better. And maybe it's because I'm looking at it through the lens of a painter and she's a dancer. And she does talk to painters directly, but I felt like a lot of the times I was like, I don't know about this advice. I don't think this is very good. Like some of it's good, but I'm like, I don't know. So that's my overall opinion of this book.
Okay, can I challenge that?
Yeah, tell me.
Because I have tons of questions that are very good and very pertinent, especially to people that are building any kind of practice, you know, whatever it may be, creative practice. Yeah, I think she addresses the elephant in the room from the very get-go, which is routine. Um, People try to push that off. They try to make excuses. At least that's what I see them as.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, this person is so successful. It just ethereally materialized itself out of nowhere. And you go to that person that they've, kind of poo-pooed, so to speak. And you go, what is your daily life look like? And I guarantee you there is some form of like scaffolding in their life of routine and all of that, from the time they wake up, what do they do when they wake up? What is their, like for painters, what is their studio practice look like? Is it set hours? Is it certain hours on certain days? How does the rest of their life flow with the rest of that? I think I struggled for the longest time until I got to that point where I figured out these are my studio hours. Yeah. That was bedrock. Until you get that nailed down, you're going to feel like you're all over the place. And until you get the people around you, support system on that schedule for you, and they understand, hey, I can't get a hold of this person or whatever during these hours. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't be able to if they had any other job.
True.
That it's massive. It can be a big struggle, and it does take time to learn. Like, I've got things down here like her fishing metaphor. What does your practice of contemplative quietness look like? Is it focused? Mm-hmm. It's not just sitting there empty-minded. It's you have a goal. It may feel empty-minded at the moment, but it's to an end. Mm-hmm. Noticing, I think this is a big one too. Noticing the DNA of who you are. What has your environment, your upbringing, the things around you kind of nurtured you towards in a good way? Like, what some people might call the upper hands that you were given, maybe out of the box? It may be a parent that's very skilled, that saw the skill in you early on and got you into things way earlier than most people get a chance. So you've got 2, 3, 4 years ahead of everybody else by the time they get started. It may be something like that, She gets into like actual DNA and some of those things that are handed down. I don't know how much of that I believe. Mm-hmm. But I could see some validity in some of that.
I would agree. I feel like there is really good parts about this book when it comes to routine, which is one of the main themes of this book. And I don't, maybe this book just isn't for me, but which is totally okay.
Right.
Just something about it. I was like, no, I know about routine, Maybe it's because I've just been doing it for so long. If you had no routine at all and you're reading this book and you're a creative type, then it would be fabulous. It would be a fabulous book for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think I'm with you on that. Like, yes, I'm at a point in my practice where a lot of this is not applicable to me. But again, for people that are early on, starting out, it's a perfect book for them to get a hold of, to try to find a foothold in what they're trying to do,
One of my favorite parts of the book is towards the beginning, and it does go into the practicalities of making a routine, like your routine. And there's on page 29, it has these little exercises that are in gray, called "Where is your pencil?" And I'm going to give an abbreviation of what this is about. So basically the idea is this young man goes up to a baseball player and he's like, hey, will you sign my baseball? And the young man is like, I don't have a pencil on me. And he goes to his parents and they don't have anything. And he goes to like a manager and they don't have anything. And finally the baseball player is just like, sorry, kid, I can't sign anything because you don't have a pencil. And the idea of your practice is constantly, yeah, wait, where is your pencil, Wondering? But the idea that your practice depends on, are you prepared? I think is one of my favorite aspects of this book. And I'm wondering, Nomad, what is your pencil? What is your tool that you have to have with you either all the time or always in your studio that makes sure that you're always ready to create? So you're not caught empty-handed, you know?
I would say my easel.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of indispensable, really.
Yeah.
I think that is it for me. Yeah.
Mine is my sketchbook. It's where I write down all my ideas. It's where I write down my to-do lists. It's everything like that. I bring it with me everywhere, basically. and I don't always take the ideas I put into the sketchbook into my studio, but having that as a tool has been invaluable throughout my creative practice. Wonder Dane says it's your mind. I like that. You know, you can't go anywhere without your mind. Always prepared. That's very good. In this exercise, she asks a couple questions. She's like, do you have a aptitude for solitude where, you know, you're able to create by yourself and think by yourself in a space? Because that's a lot of what being a painter at least, is about, and not feeling lonely during those moments of chosen solitude. And I think that's cool. How do you fare when you're alone?
I've always been a fairly solitary human being, even as a kid. And I know, like, especially with like COVID. Yeah. I know a lot of people, I knew the struggle that they were going to run into. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to remind people that are introverted around me, like, hey, you got to help them out because this is going to be really hard for them. Right. It comes natural to us, but to them, it's like somebody sucked all the air out of the room. Yeah. You know, and so, again, it comes back to that fishing practice of I'm not alone. I'm actually here, like, working through something. I'm working towards an end. And I think that's what makes it less lonely, is that I'm doing something. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's part of who I am, you know?
I love it. It's so good. Being alone is like my favorite thing. I feel like I travel best when I'm by myself. I I live with my partner, but I'm like, solitude is where it's at. Here's one more question before we move on to another topic here, but part of having a good routine is being without some things, namely distractions. What are some of your distractions that hook you away from your artwork? Can you think of any that just immediately come to mind?
My name is Jen, and I'm addicted to Apex Legends. And yeah.
It's the truth.
I feel like I entered an AA meeting.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's hysterical. Mine is definitely my cell phone. I'm like, just get me off of Instagram, get me off of TikTok, help. I cannot be stopped.
YouTube is another one. YouTube's pretty bad too.
Some of the unusual examples that Tharp gives in this book is they're like little challenges. She's like, try and go 1 week without one of these things. So a week without mirrors is an interesting one. Can you go a week without looking at your reflection? It'll change the way you think about yourself. Can you do a week without clocks and like a strict timetable? Right. Which I think would be extremely challenging since you have your time on your phone and on your computers and everything. That would be a super challenge. Can you go without, she says newspapers here, but I'm going to say that as reading the news at all. And she caveats this as do this only for a week, otherwise it breeds ignorance. And I'm like, I like that. That's good. And then the fifth one was, can you go without speaking for a week? I don't think I've ever done that. Have you ever done something like that?
I'm fairly quiet and to myself for the most part. So yeah, I'm sure I've gone at least a week without saying anything.
Gosh.
Interesting though.
Yeah.
So, complete side note. So the singer Lizzo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know who she is.
Oh yeah.
She went 3 years without talking, I think is what it was. Something crazy like that.
What?
Yeah. She just was like, I had nothing to say. She's like, it wasn't like I was rude or upset or angry or anything. She's like, I just didn't have anything to say.
Wow.
And she's like, and I came out of that and I haven't shut up since. I just laughed. Because somebody asked her that on an interview and I was like, wow.
Holy cats.
To go that long without a conversation with family or anything. And she lived with her family at the time. So it wasn't like she was out on her own. She was around people. This was when she was a teenager.
Damn.
So, yeah.
I feel like if I did a week without speaking, I would also restrict that to talking to other people online. Speaking in all its forms. Conversations.
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah. And I feel like
social relationships.
Right. Like no writing, no anything. And then like Wonder Dane just said, the mirror thing I could easily do. I feel like if you're gonna do a challenge of one of these things, you don't pick the one that's easy. You do the one that you're most addicted to. It says speaking, not communicating. Right. I feel like not communicating would be the most interesting form of that. Just at all. Anyways. So those are fun challenges to try out. I don't know if I'll do any of them, but maybe if I'm stuck in a rut, that'd be fun.
Well, and some people have to work in that vacuum. Like, it's not uncommon for writers or painters or, artists for that matter to get a cabin in the middle of nowhere where they don't have cell service or anything. And the romanticized idea of, no communication. But some people need that so that they don't have all these outside influences, like muddying up what vision that they have, what they're trying to get to. I could see how some of that noise would be distracting and be like, oh, let's add this to this.
Right.
And let's add that to that. But it wasn't really intended in there in the first place. And it's like, I think there's that research phase of anything that you do. Or you gather all of that, then you sit down and you get to work. So by the time you're at the cabin, you've done that research phase. Yeah, like, trust the research that you've done and go from there.
It's interesting. Have you gone in a what am I going to call it? A retreat, I guess, like that before? Have you done that?
A self-professed hermit. Every day of my life is a retreat like that.
All right, don't do that. Have you ever gone on to like an all-paid cruise with like 1,000 people?
No, because cruises terrify me.
It's karaoke cruise.
No, I still get social interaction. I promise I do.
I feel like that would be harder for me too.
Human being.
Yeah. Gosh. Earlier in our conversation, you were chatting about DNA, and she talks about how your creative DNA really affects how you make things and how you approach your problems, and I think that's quite interesting. Talks about how DNA, just like your ancestral, your family, your friends that you like, how it all affects your approach to having a creative habit also. And I think that's interesting to think about. She has a questionnaire, and I'm not going to answer all these questions. I'm just going to read them out. But you kind of answer these questions, and it kind of reveals to you how your past, how your circumstance, like, really affects you. And then once you, like, observe that, you can start to change things as you need to. But, like, here's a couple of the questions. What is the first creative moment you remember? Was there anyone there to witness or appreciate it? Like, those are cool questions. What's the best idea you've ever had, and what made it great? Describe your first successful creative act, and then describe your second successful creative act and compare them. Who is your muse, and define what muse means? What is your greatest fear, and what is the likelihood of your greatest idea and your greatest fear? Like, what is that relationship? Like, right? And which of your answers that you answer out of this 33 question questionnaire would you most like to change? They're quite interesting. And I know at the beginning of this conversation I was like, I don't really like this book, and I still don't really like this book, but I think her exercises are my favorite parts. Yeah.
I think it's important to ask yourself those questions. I think
they're great. Yeah.
I run into a lot of people that are just like, oh, I can't figure out, like, for painters, I can't figure out my style, and it's like, have you sat down with questions like this and answered them? So I think it helps you find those things that you're attracted to, and in that's where all of you is going to come out of, and whatever you do. I mean, like, she talks about music and all the things that her mother put her through as a kid, and how that is played into, like, people see her as a dance choreographer. But there's so much more that she's, like, pulled out of her past to bring into that you wouldn't necessarily think. Background in music and all of that, just
Yep.
I think it's important for every human being to ask themselves that.
Totally.
The moment that you get discontented and you're like, why the heck am I doing what I'm doing? Back to those questions and go, where should I be?
There's a whole chapter. Did you read the chapter about scratching?
I did not, but I had a question about it though. What are your forms of scratching?
Yeah, scratching is interesting. It's basically it's part of the habitual routine that generates ideas. And it's like, you can't just, like, she's a dancer. She's like, you can't just, like, make a dance. You have to, like, scratch out little ideas from different resources and reading and listening to music and being in different spaces. And you kind of, like, scratch away at an idea, and then you kind of start to see what it is. They're like starts, basically, in painting, right? Where you start a painting and you're like, do I want to continue elaborating on this? And you can scratch by, traveling. You can do it by reading. You can do it. These are things she's listed out. They're interesting, and you can scratch by looking at other people's work. You can do it by meeting a hero. You can do it by just exercising or getting really toasty. Like, those are her references, and they're interesting. I wonder what your sort of scratching is.
For me, some of my forms of scratching are, like, during the time that I eat my breakfast. I watch YouTube videos. Sometimes that can be, mundane, whatever. I like watching car YouTubes, but watch things like Baumgartner Restoration.
Love them.
Get into art conservancy as a painter. What are the things that I can do to conserve the pieces that I create? And also you learn a ton of history and technique, and just get a better understanding all the way around of what we do as painters. I fall down multiple rabbit holes of, like, it could be a documentary on Picasso, or, I went on this whole binge of learning about abstract artists, because you don't really learn a whole lot in school about abstract art because it's more of a contemporary idea. So I was like, okay, how many are there? Let's go learn about all of them. And so I would spend hours, like, watching documentaries on different abstract artists, and just, like, getting a better idea of, my sense and place in art. Yeah, I mean, walks, museums, that all that, movies, that kind of thing. Anything around me, there's always stuff that sparks my interest. I mean, I have photography in my background as well, so I'm definitely a visual person, and I love people watching. And so that's always interesting to like see what you can glean from that as well. So
people watching is such a good one. There's an exercise in this book where she recommends that you, or maybe she took this idea from someone else. I don't remember. I don't remember what page it's on, or else I would look it up for y'all. But it's like, go to a public place and watch a pair of people and fill out these questions. It's like, what is their relationship? What are they fighting about? How is their body language? Who's walking faster than the other? How are they dressed? Are they like leaning into each other? Are they like, seem to be at aggressions? Like, and you ask these like 20 questions, and then you do it again with another person, and it kind of like trains your observation. And that's a fun way to scratch. My favorite is traveling. Whenever I travel, I feel like I get just like buckets of ideas. I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to go back to the studio and make something cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's my like top tier one. It's pretty fun. Look at these.
Love traveling. It's so good.
There's one of my favorite parts of this book is this section about being generous. And she talks towards the beginning of the book, but she'll come back to it, where she's like, she says, don't ignore a generous impulse because it creates luck and brings it back to you. Basically, it's like when you're generous to someone, you are giving them luck. And that in turn cascades into luck for other people, right? And it eventually comes back around. And I feel like to be a great artist, you have to be generous with your time and with your energy towards other artists and other people who are, your collectors and things like that. But I loved it. I loved it. Being generous contributes to good luck towards yourself. And that was a fun little tidbit in this book. Do you find that when you're generous towards other people, you get like a dopamine hit? Does that ever happen to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I was extremely wealthy and even remotely rich, my favorite thing to do would be to just like find out what people need, take care of it without them ever knowing it was me, and just let life happen. But like, yeah, just take care of people around me. I think that'd be amazing.
It's fun. About 5 years ago, I started doing this like secret project that whenever I would visit a friend's like art studio or whatever, I would always offer to help them clean it if they needed help, or just like without like them asking. I'd be like, do you want to tidy for like an hour? Like, is that something without making them feel like, oh, I'm a mess, and that like
right
dopamine high would like last me a whole week of just like helping someone else clean, or sometimes I'll give away like art lessons or something, just to like people I know. And every time I do that, I'm just like, this is the greatest. I want to paint now. Yeah. It's a good feeling. I feel like it helps kickstart you out of a creative rut if you're in one. If you give to someone else your time or your money or whatever, you it helps you create more later. There's something about it. It's like a secret thing. I don't know if anyone like associates giving with creativity, but I feel like I see it often. It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cyclical thing. It gives back into itself.
Yeah.
Like you said, you help somebody else out. You see what they do. That can be inspiring to you, as you enabled them to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, that's what they did. Oh, well, I would like to do this. It's
totally.
It's this, locomotive effect, so to speak.
Okay. So this is my least favorite part of the book, and I can't wait to talk about it. Okay, so in the book, and towards the end, she has a exercise that says play 20 questions. And I love the idea of this, which is funny that it's my least favorite thing. But it's like thoroughness, like discipline, is one of the most valuable skills you can have. The patience to accumulate detail keeps you grounded and sharp. In Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks are evidence of an obsessive thoroughness. For example, he was fascinated by water, and then it lists out 20 questions that he like wrote down about water. Like where is the water slow at the bottom, and why is it swift above, and where do water stretch itself out, and where does it contrast, and why is it low in the middle and high at the sides, and why is like just questions after questions. And then you're like, okay, that's interesting. Stephanie, why is this your least favorite? It's because she this is so funny to me. She's like, let's say you decide to paint a landscape. Here are 20 questions to consider about landscape painting. And she's not a painter. I mean, she's kind of a painter, but not really a painter. And I thought some of these questions are good, but some of these I'm just like, you should not ask this question if you're a painter. And now I'm going to read them out to you. This is a good question. From what direction is light coming? That's a great question. Number 2, what is the elevation? I feel like that matters less. Number 3, what trees are native to the area? What is the nearest source of water? What animals are likely to be in view? What season is it? What's the weather? Are you looking down, across, or up? What crops are being cultivated, if any? Are there towns or villages nearby? Why are you there? I feel like if I asked myself the question, why am I here, when I was painting a landscape, I would stop painting. Like it would just halt me in my tracks. Why
am I here?
Why am I here? What is attractive about the setting? Is the wind blowing?
What's today?
How much sky can you see? What's behind you? What's behind me? I don't want to know what's behind me. Okay. What color predominates you in your mind's eye? How many shades of that color can you see in the region? No, I feel like a beginner would ask these questions. But like someone who's really good at landscape painting would be like, you need to stop asking questions about things and you need to start just looking.
Or do they innately ask themselves that question? They don't have to think about asking themselves that question. They automatically do that.
It's very funny.
That goes back to muscle memory too. You know, she talks about that.
Mm-hmm. Anyways,
how much of that is just pure training,
right? I would not ask myself these questions if I was painting a landscape, but you know what? I like the idea of 20 questions. It's cute. It's good. I think it would get you going if you were stuck. And that's what's important. But also I'm just like, don't ask yourself where you're there when you're trying to paint, because that will just kill you. Just KO, just like end. Next time I go to my easel and be like, why am I here? And then I'll stop painting for a while and it'll be like, how did I get here? Tell me something else you liked about this book.
So on that topic, like
in
photography, one of the things that I have done a lot of and that you learn to do is to actually scout the place out that you want to take the photo in. Mm-hmm. Find out what the best time of day is. You find out when it's, you know, if you need a lot of movement, when is the busiest time, you know. And you may not take anything that day. Maybe you're at a coffee shop and you're across from Columbus Circle and you're like, when is the best time to take a photo here? Like, where is the best light? You come back the next day and you know these things. And I mean, that gets into her idea of like the scaffolding of the process of when you do things. You built this scaffolding around the piece, but that gives you room to free flow inside of that. So yeah, like, I don't know. It's kind of how I view it, but, I don't know. One thing that I wanted to ask you was, how do you deal with, she talks about the spine of your work. She talks about an instance where, she had created this dance piece and she had put out there, you know, it's about this, you know, part of Greek mythology, whatever. And then people started asking her about this because they kept looking for it. For her, it was kind of a stepping stone more so than anything. It wasn't the end all be all. It was the spine of her work, but she said in that instance she probably should have kept that to herself. How do you feel about that? You know, whenever it comes to anything that you've kind of put yourself into, especially maybe a personal piece that you've come up with, not necessarily commission. How do you deal with that spine? Like, how much of that do you reveal?
It's such a great question. And I feel like I relate to her when she was doing that piece, that choreography piece about the Greek god, and then it just kind of evolved away from her. I feel like I don't tell people a lot what my ideas are at the very beginning. If you've watched me on Twitch before, you know I start out with a grid and I pick a couple colors, and then by like halfway through I'll be like, this is what this is about. When it's like well defined and it's already on the canvas. And I like to tell people my ideas. Sometimes I'll, like for the Loki painting I just did, I'll be like, this is going to be about Loki. And then people really expect it. But also I think it helps keep me focused. But yeah, sometimes I do have paintings where people will be like, oh, I thought this was about this. And I'll be like, it was. And I think if you're just honest with people, it doesn't matter as much. But she's working in a different field where the stage of it is much more vast and where she has more eyes on it actively during the process. Like it's a different kind of involvement. Yeah, I feel like when I am just honest about the ideas changing, and I make sure I change the title of whatever the painting is to reflect what it's currently about, you know, at the end of the painting versus where the ideas were at the beginning. That's also important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Because
I think I did the same thing. You know, I may start out with one title, so to speak, for a piece. By the end, sometimes it's adjusted, sometimes it isn't, you know?
Yeah. It's harder when I have a commission and someone's like, I want this painting to be about this thing. And on 2 occasions have I finished a painting, looked at it. I haven't shown like work in progress to my client, but I'll be like, this is not what they wanted. And I'll start over. I won't wipe it out, but I'll just get a fresh piece of canvas and I'll try again. And sometimes I'll offer one of the other paintings to them to see if they want one, but usually I'm like, the second version is much more accurate to the idea that they had and paid me for. That happens a couple times. I'm getting better at it though, about staying focused to the idea. Sometimes your brush is...
and how much of that is part of the scratching process too?
There we go. I feel like the scratching process is a lot earlier in the idea. Like it's within the first, hour of making something. And then it quickly gets away from you. I don't know. Maybe not. I often will do trios, like you're doing something similar right now. I'll do like 3 paintings that all have the same drawing. And they'll come out very differently from each other. And I think that's part of the scratching that happens.
Okay.
It's just like experiments, right? Where you're like, I'm going to paint the Walkman 9 times. Right. Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 5 stars, how many stars are you giving this book?
With what I've read, the 1 to 5, I give it a 3. Nice.
I gave it 2. I think it has some good bits, some good nuggets, but overall I didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Who would you recommend this book for?
People that are just starting to get into whatever they're practicing. I would think it would be good for teenagers that are learning skills, to start off, with a good base. Mm-hmm. Anything that they're trying to get into. I think it's good for them. But yeah, people coming out of college that are, trying to start up a business or whatever. What they're doing. I think it's important.
If you're a dancer, you're going to love this book. If you are at all into the choreography world, she has a lot of personal stories about this author who is about herself. They're very personal. They're very deep and they're interesting. especially if you're familiar with her dance work, which is vast. She's done a lot of work. Yeah, she has a couple other books that are interesting. One is called, she briefly mentions it in this book, it's called Where is Your Pencil? And then in another book, it's called Do a Verb. And Build a Bridge in the Next Day. I think her titles are just really great. So if you liked kind of what we talked about here, you should check out her other books. Heck yeah. The next book that we're going to read, which is we're going to chat about in January. We're going to take a 2-month break off from Art Book Club. And I've chosen a big book because of this. I'm like, we have extra time, so we're going to read something quite good. This book I found in 2013, and it's called Alla Prima 2. And if you happen to get Alla Prima, we can talk about the comparisons between the two books, but I'm reading this one, so get whatever works for you. She's a big one, and I'm gonna read the back, which has Richard Schmidt, the author, on it, and look at him. He's just happy as a clam, just had a good time painting.
Richard, we miss you.
Oh, Richard, we miss you. He says, welcome to this grand adventure through the world of painting. Read about confidence, talent, skill, perception, and control. Learn how to get past all the annoying little things that get in the way of creative thinking. Find out what values and edges are all about. Checks out some way of starting. The key ideas about color and color harmony. Learn about drawing expertly, simplifying composition, and the most common problems in painting. And what to do when a painting crashes. I think it's going to be good. Many people have recommended this book to me, and I'm excited to start it. I've had it dusty on my shelf for a couple years now, so it's a good choice to read.
I can attest it will wreck you as a painter.
Can't wait.
So buckle up. It will wreck you. It's good. It's a good one.
Heck
I've read Alla Prima and Alla Prima too. Yeah.
Wow. Well, then you can give a little refresher, and it'll be good. Are there exercises in this book, like things you could test out?
I believe so. Yeah.
Maybe we should do one. Could be fun.
I mean,
could be fun.
You can if you want. A lot of it is outside. I don't paint Alla Prima, so I mean, he would be disappointed in me to begin with. He'd be like, "Why not?" I'd be like, "Listen, Richard.
Listen,
I'm avant-garde. Okay, leave me alone."
We're a different breed. It's gonna be great. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for this book. It should be good. Maybe I'm thinking next year. So next year, our book club will start up again. And I'm thinking it might be fun to do like a video documentary as one of our quote unquote book club picks. That would be fun. I am going to come up with a list of fun books for us to read. If you're listening and you're like, I have a book I want you to read, you should send it to us because I'll try and buy it and read it and give you my very honest opinions on it. Heck yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts?
I don't think so.
Cool. Excellent. Well, that's been a successful art book club. We've done the thing. Thank you so much to Visual Nomad for hanging out and chatting with me about Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit. I had a blast chatting with you about it, and I love our art book club. Art book club is taking a bit of a hiatus. We'll be back in January on the 8th on Twitch talking about Alla Prima 2 by Richard Schmidt. And this will be my first read-through of this book. It'll be Nomad's second read-through. I'm excited about it. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll make some weird paintings. But until then, we'll have some more Brushwork podcast coming up in the next week. See you then.